Welcome back to the Kaspa Silver YouTube channel. In today's video, I want to discuss a recent decision I made, which was that I recently sold all of my cold storage Bitcoin for Kaspa. And so I want to discuss this decision and also, first off, let you guys know that this isn't me telling you to do what I'm doing. This is my personal decision based on my financial situation. Please do your own due diligence and don't just copy what I'm doing. Make sure that you are doing your own research and thinking for yourself, but this is just my personal decision. So I decided to sell all my cold storage Bitcoin, and I still do have exposure to Bitcoin, but it is only through an ETF. And so I want to first explain to you why I have personally chosen to keep having exposure through an ETF. And yes, I know people are going to say that, not your keys, not your coins. But honestly, I'm at the point now where Bitcoin has just simply not really fit my personal reasons as to why I'm in cryptocurrency. And also, I personally just see much better upside when it comes to holding Kaspa. Now, I still have a little bit of exposure to BTC. It is an ETF. And I personally chose to hold my exposure in BTC in the FBTC ETF because if we're looking at all of the custodians for ETFs, you could see that most applicants are using Coinbase as a custodian. And as you can see right here, Fidelity is pretty much the only ETF that is self-custodying their Bitcoin. And so personally, I think that any of these applicants who are using Coinbase as a custodian is a much bigger risk because Coinbase is a single point of failure and would be much more prone to an attack, because if you can attack Coinbase, you don't just get access to one ETF, you get access to pretty much all of them. And so Fidelity at least self-custody their Bitcoin, and that's why I'm only holding exposure to Bitcoin through them. Now, I'm first going to explain the investment perspective of Bitcoin versus Kaspa and the reason why I've decided to make this decision. So first off, Bitcoin is already a $2.4 trillion market cap. A lot of people think it's going to pass gold one day. I personally think that is possible, but I don't think it's happening within the next year or 2 years. I think if this was to happen, it would take 5+ years. And if it does reach gold's market cap and even surpass it, that would only be less than a 10x in your money. And then if we're looking at something like Kaspa, currently sitting at 2.6 billion market cap, I personally believe Kaspa is extremely undervalued. And I think it's safe to say that if it's underneath Dogecoin, that it is still undervalued, in my opinion. And if we're looking at the emissions in the last 24 hours, you could see that Kaspa is actually in the top 4 proof-of-work cryptocurrencies that are producing emissions in the last 24 hours. It's currently sitting at about $400,000 for miners every 24 hours. Dogecoin is sitting at $3.37 million. Kaspa doesn't even need to hit a 37.12 billion market cap to actually surpass Dogecoin and how much revenue Kaspa is creating for miners. But if we were to take the mining emission and divide that by Kaspa's current mining emission, you could see that Kaspa needs an 8.5x pretty much, which that would only put Kaspa at around a 16 to $17 billion market cap, and it could already surpass Dogecoin in terms of mining emission, mining revenue for miners every 24 hours. And if Kaspa was to reach that top 2 spot in terms of providing mining revenue within 24 hours, then I think that would just give Kaspa a lot more reach, because miners will see that Kaspa is actually a valuable coin to be mining. It will make it more profitable. And then I think Kaspa will just get more and more attention. And ultimately, though, I still think Kaspa is undervalued. It should surpass Dogecoin one day. And so that's a potential 14x if we're looking at current prices right now. If Kaspa was to potentially reach Dogecoin's market cap. And I personally believe that a 14x is much more doable for Kaspa because it is sitting at a 2 billion market cap. It takes much less money to go from 2 billion to 36 billion then for a Bitcoin to go from 2 trillion to 22 trillion to just give you a 9x. And not only that, it could take 5+ years. Whereas for Kaspa, I could see this taking maybe 1 to 3 years. But of course, I don't know the future. This is just my personal outlook of how I see Kaspa, how I see it valued. And this is probably like my most conservative outlook in that Kaspa is definitely more valuable than Dogecoin. It should be. And so potentially this is what we could be looking at. But obviously, I don't really know the future. And this is just what I'm doing based on my risk tolerance. Now, outside of the investment perspective, Bitcoin just simply does not fit my purpose of why I'm in cryptocurrency. I truly am in cryptocurrency outside of just trying to build wealth, is to actually have an alternative to my fiat and an actual peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And Bitcoin simply just doesn't fit the bill for this anymore. Today, Bitcoin is more of a peer-to-peer electronic system for number go up. And this is kind of like a parody, but it's pretty funny here. It says a purely custodial store of number system allowing BlackRock and corporate entities to take full ownership of the revolution, enabling annualized returns without the hassle of self-custody. This system solves the problem of thinking by eliminating the need for users to care about fees, scaling, or transaction throughput. Transactions are not to be settled, but to be spectated as celebrities and public companies accumulate on your behalf. In this system, Lightning is a feature. No one uses it, and sovereignty is delegated to trusted institutions. The goal is simple: hodl until retirement and outsource freedom to ETFs. And this is kind of funny because I actually did this last part right here. Why did I do that last part? It's because literally Bitcoin's incentives are simply not aligned with mine. And the incentives for self-custodying Bitcoin just make no sense for me. If I self-custody my Bitcoin, I simply am just staring at it. I have no desire to use it. And not only that, if I want to access some of the wealth, I would have to pay taxes on accessing some of the wealth. Whereas I can just have exposure to Bitcoin in my Roth IRA and be completely tax-free on any kind of gains that may happen with Bitcoin. And not only that, I do understand that, yes, not your keys, not your coins, but honestly, ETFs have an economic incentive to basically not go bankrupt or to do anything shady. And if anything was to happen to ETFs, worrying about me losing my exposure to Bitcoin is going to be the least of my worries. I think Bitcoin itself would collapse in price. So there's an economic incentive for these ETFs to basically stay legit. But at the end of the day, I really don't have that much desire to use Bitcoin. And so I only have a desire to have a little bit of exposure to it. And so I decided to basically go all in self-custody of only into Kaspa, because with Kaspa, I just actually use my Kaspa. I actually have desire to use it. I use it to pay for my goods and services. I use it to text people. I use it for a social media platform. There's actually much more use case for it. I treat it as a savings account. I treat it as a checking account. And I just simply think Kaspa is more aligned with the original vision that cryptocurrency was supposed to give to us, which was self-sovereignty, no more middlemen having access to your wealth. And so I'm also not the only person that has come to this conclusion. We can look at Plan B here, which is a pretty big Bitcoin YouTuber, 217,000 subscribers. He also recently decided to make the same decision. And this is a Bitcoin maxi. He says, disclosure, I have transferred my Bitcoin to ETFs. Yes, I know not your keys, not your coins, but it is just easier for me to manage Bitcoin the same way as equity and bonds. Also, not having to hassle with keys give me a peace of mind. I guess I'm not a maxi anymore. And I mean, he got a lot of flack for this, but listen, Bitcoin just doesn't have good incentives to self-custody. I mean, just trying to get my Bitcoin out of cold storage, I had to first group all of my addresses into one address. This costed me $8.50, right? And I paid this $8.50 to make sure I can get my funds within 10 minutes. It still ended up taking 30 minutes to get my funds. And so I paid $8 to manage my addresses. And then once I send Bitcoin off of my cold storage wallet, I had to pay like another dollar and something to still not even see my funds within 10 minutes. It still took over 10 minutes to get my funds to where I needed it to go. And then I finally was able to swap completely into Kaspa right away. I did not dollar cost average into it. I swapped completely into Kaspa at around 8 cents or whatever. And this isn't the first time I've done this. The first time I actually did this with Bitcoin was when Kaspa was like at 2 cents and Bitcoin was at like at $22,000. I sold all of my Bitcoin for Kaspa at that time. And then I started buying Bitcoin again for cold storage at around the $40,000 range. And then ever since it's kind of just done its run up, I've been doing my research and due diligence between Kaspa and Bitcoin. These debates have been happening. I just simply think Kaspa, risk to reward, is like the best in the space, in my opinion. I think the risk for Kaspa, the biggest risk for Kaspa is simply that it just doesn't catch on. And the reward potential is extremely great, in my opinion. And so I still have exposure to Bitcoin, just not in a cold storage way, because simply the incentives are just not there for me to handle Bitcoin in that way. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. And before we go, if you guys are interested in doing a one-on-one video call with me, you could pay $25 for 30 minutes or $50 for a full hour. And this is a great way for you to pick my brain and be able to ask any kind of questions you have with Kaspa. If you need any help with nodes or mining or anything like that, wallet support, you can set up a call, book a call with me, and I would be more than happy to assist you. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here, and as always, don't be average, be different.